Hi everyone, I'm Shanshan from Beijing University of Civil Engineering and Architecture. I am very happy to join this webinar to discuss with you about the big history, about the big architecture and how to build a sustainable society for humanity. We have just learned the concept of big architecture from Nobel and the evolution of mosque architecture from Professor Tajuddin, and Esther has just explained us about the importance of a big history for sustainable building sanity. She has also brought out a lot of strategies we may take. My presentation is about the Chinese traditional building ideology. I think Chinese also has think of those strategies for centuries. And I hope the insight from the past can also bring out some inspiration. Firstly, let's have a look of the pictures of architecture from different time. From these pictures, we can see that the European architectures has went through a tremendous change of stylistic trends for the past centuries. Meanwhile, the evolution of traditional Chinese architecture followed a unique course in which there was only very small and slow variation over thousands of years. And here we can see two photos of cities from different times in China. At the left is the old picture of Beijing, in which we can see most of the buildings are one or two-storied courtyards, and the only high-rise building is the towers of the bells and drums, which the sound from them tells people the time of the day. And on the right is a photo of modern Chinese city Shanghai, in which we can see a lot of high rises. The appearance of the city changes every day. So what makes these differences? Unsolved issues remained in the development process of traditional Chinese architecture and city design, such as the lack of motivation to build high structures, the delay of applying new technology in domestic architecture. The question is why, given that the building technology already exists and in use, their wide application was discouraged. The underlying reason that did not permit the overdevelopment of heavy constructions was due to a broad philosophical trend in traditional Chinese culture. The Confucian ideal of modesty and humbleness influenced the layout of the city and the design of buildings to make the whole society more sustainable. Confucianism developed from the teaching of the Chinese philosopher Confucius. The ecological insight of Confucianism was profoundly derived from the ecological and cultural backgrounds of its origin. The formation of Confucianism based on Chinese civilization mainly represented by Huaxia civilization, located in the Central Plain region of China, which is around here. Before the beginning of Xia dynasty, multiple cultures has flourished around the Central Plain region. However, all of those cultures declined after a short period of prosperity. The reasons of the declination and the continuation of cultures are complicated, but several social tendency differences can be observed in those early Chinese cultures. In the ascent stage of the declined cultures, we can often observe excessive exploration of nature resources. Large-scale cities, religious monuments, palaces, and tombs are often discovered in archaeological sites of those cultures. The ideology behind those large construction activities are the belief that humans' requirements are of the most important. Therefore, most of those societies advocated luxurious lifestyle and considered that the resource of nature can be taken ceaselessly. The booms caused by over-exploration were followed by the exhausting of resources and degradation of the environment. This in turn might be one of the major causes for the declination of the civilizations. On the contrary, the cultures in the Central Plain region have chosen a moderate developing style. The archaeological finds in this area do not include large-scale tombs, lavish religious remains, or evidence of luxurious lifestyle. It seems that Huaxia civilization has learned from the cultures around the Central region. When referring to the legendary leader of one tribe in the Central Plain region, Emperor Yao, later scholars said his roof was untrimmed and his beam unclaimed. And when referring to Emperor Yu, the legend also says that he lived in a low mean house, but he dedicates all his energy in water conservancy projects. The legend of early empires became the moral examples of Confucian virtues for the leaders, for the later rulers in Chinese history. Confucianism, which begins to shift during this period, adapted the moderate philosophy for development and the respecting attitude towards the nature. To keep the sustainability of society and avoid social and environmental collapse, Confucianism promotes the virtue of humbleness and modesty. It formulated a complex ideological system for the restriction of overdevelopment in the society. This ideological system is all pervasive and which affected both the emperors and the civilians and have an impact on many aspects of architecture and urban design. This picture shows the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor, which in the style of the high-rise terraces that once was popular in ancient China. This kind of massive construction has met an open opposition from Confucianists and always raised social problems in the states. Throughout Chinese history, whenever the emperor were engaged with massive constructions, they always incur criticism from the Confucianists. Since Confucianism has become the dominating ideology in the traditional Chinese society, most historians were in fact Confucianists. Therefore, in their records of past emperors, Confucian historians always include criticism of the former emperors. This certainly would have an impact on the political decisions of the following rulers. The restriction of luxury was not only on the emperor household, but also on everyone in traditional Chinese society. Traditional Chinese society has established a complete system for the restriction of constructions. The restriction was not only on the building's area, scale, and architecture forms, but also on ornaments. Even though some constructions was not openly restricted, such as building luxurious private gardens, they nevertheless will arouse negative social opinion. For instance, In this picture, it shows the private garden of Wang Shimin, a scholar in Ming Dynasty. It becomes the target of criticism for being too luxurious, and Wang was forced to open the garden to public under the pressure of the social opinion. The Confucian ideology regards a good society as stable, well-ordered, friendly, and impartial. It encourages cooperation instead of vicious competition within the society. As a result, the urban layout of traditional Chinese cities presents a harmonious picture. The Confucian's ideology regards a good society. Confucianism has a great esteem for ritual system, regarding it as the right means of conduct for keeping the social harmony. So the Confucian ritual system strived to integrate all social norms and relations by institutionalizing them in morality and law, as previously mentioned, also mentioned by Esther. China has the legislated restriction of the construction according to Confucian ritual system into the building code. This is the picture showing the building code in Tang Dynasty. The Confucian philosophy advocated harmony between human beings and nature as co-equal. The philosophy of harmonizing relationship between nature and human beings has been reflected by the Confucian canon I Ching, classic of changes. The Confucian concepts of universe and nature have strongly influenced the feng shui theory, which has historically been used for choosing sites for cities and architectures. Being close to water is important for site choosing because water is an essential resource for both agriculture and basic commodity. It can adjust the microclimate to traditional Chinese wisdom for complying with nature dictated that cities should be built in the inner curve of the river. The effort to achieve this ideal site is called Gongrui in Chinese. Literally means strive for the inner curve of the river. Rui and auspicious sound the same in Chinese. Meandering rivers always erode the bound of the outer curve and deposit the sediment on the inner curve, which will make the land of the inner curve grow over time. The water close to the inner curve is shallower and slower, which makes the bank safer than the outer curve. In feng shui, setting the sites at the south of the mountains is also an important part of site choosing. The mountains in the north could shelter the city or the building from northern wind in the winter. It is very important for the climates in China. By this means, the settlements would become warm in the winter and reduce the consumption of energy for heating. And influenced by Confucianism, traditional Chinese constructors prefer smart ideas over magnificence. They believe that luxury is due to lack of creativity, and originality is great refinement. For example, it is a tradition for Chinese buildings to reutilize used building materials, especially for construction of gardens. In the gardens of the pavements, the pavements can be made by used tiles and stones. The patterns are abundant with different designs. Some are even being paved as paintings, as shown in this picture. Confucianism has profoundly influenced the traditional Chinese urban and architecture design. It has been formed in a cultural background that has learned the lesson of environmental degradations and has slowly evolved a moderation and ecological friendly strategy of development. Its ideology of a ritual system has restricted the excessive large-scale construction and made the urban layout harmless. Its philosophical and aesthetic concepts have helped to encourage creative designs, therefore making cities greener and smarter. Throughout history, Confucianism has acted as a safe valve to avoid extreme environmental and social collapse in China. Its concepts and series has been the basis of urban planning, which makes the city being in a harmonious relationship with nature. We believe that the Confucian ideal could still be beneficial for today's urban planning and architecture design practice. Some Confucian concepts could provide a valuable source of references for constructing today's green and smart city. So this is all of my presentation. Thank you.